Hi, this week's First Chapter Friday is Shadows of Sherwood by Kekla Magoon. Kekla Magoon is a local Vermont author who's actually coming to our school to do an author visit soon. So I thought it might be nice for you to get to know some of her books. This one is a great adventure story. It starts off kind of as like a mystery thriller. It is a sort of a spoof or a takeoff or a retelling, a more modern day retelling of the Robin Hood story. And what happens is the main character's parents go missing, and she knows that the evil governor of Knot is to blame. So she and a band of misfits are trying to figure out what's going on and to try to help and save people. So I'm going to read you the first couple chapters. The chapters are really short, so I'm going to read a couple of them. Chapter 1, 42 Teeth. The sign on the fence said, "Beware of dogs." Robin scaled it anyway. Dogs, as in plural, she thought as she laced her fingers in the chain link, wedged the toes of her boots into the diamond-shaped spaces, and climbed. That could be a problem. There were plenty of problems tonight. For starters, the bare light bulbs that hung at intervals along the fence had been recently changed to a higher wattage. The conical swaths of light they cast were larger and brighter than Robin had ever seen. She'd also spotted 6 different guards patrolling the inside perimeter of the enclosed lot. That was 3 times the usual, and they were packing. Long automatic rifles draped over their shoulders or held loosely at their sides by the necks. None of it made any sense. The guards at the 410 compound were usually unarmed, bottom of the barrel in the brains department, and easy to evade. The 410 was a simple refuse depository, a junkyard basically, with no need for such high security. Unless something had changed. Robin gulped at the thought. An hour ago, as she slipped out her bedroom window and dashed off into the night, this supply run had seemed like it would be no big deal. Scale the fence, stuff a few new gadgets into her backpack, whatever she could find that appeared useful, and climb back out again. She'd done it dozens of times before. Normally, staying unseen was easy and fun. Dodging the guards was all part of the adventure. Now, scaling the fence, Robin felt a hint of trepidation. Things were not as they ought to be. Had she missed something? Robin kept on climbing, though her mind ticked around the problems at hand. Guards, guns, and how many dogs exactly? The guys patrolling the fence looked more like soldiers than civilian security guards. Those big guns, what could be within the 410 that was worth protecting with so much firepower? Really valuable trash? Not likely. These changes could mean Governor Crown was up to something new. As if he hadn't done enough damage in Knot City already, Dad would say. It was all he could talk about anymore. His government work took up all his time now, leaving no space for any of the things he and Robin used to do together. He'd entirely stopped bringing home interesting items for them to tinker with the way he used to, so Robin was forced to find her own sources of scrap. Tonight, she hoped to end her weeks-long quest for a better voltage adapter for her favorite circuit board. She wanted to improve the elaborate system of intruder alarms at her bedroom suite. She'd been working on it for ages. Next time Dad visited her room, he would see that Robin didn't need his help to build something awesome. But he hasn't so much as tapped on her door in weeks. She crept higher. 12 feet up, she paused to study the coil of barbed wire crowning the fence. Moment of truth. Robin glanced down at the roof of the parked office trailer inside the fence, her landing surface, and drew a deep breath. She inverted her fingers' grip on the links, sucked in her stomach, and, drawing on years of gymnastics training, kicked off the fence and vaulted her legs over, releasing her hands at what she hoped was the opportune moment. Almost. The barbed wire slashed at her just-bought thrift store jeans. "Dang it," she murmured, fingering the long, jagged tear as she dropped into a crouch on the trailer top. The thick tail of her single braid coiled over her shoulder and fell against her arm. She flipped it out of the way. Robin balanced on the balls of her feet and the tips of her fingers, listening. Had the soft thump of her landing alerted the guards? From this vantage point, the entire lot looked perfectly still, and completely dark, apart from the glow from the bulbs at the fence and the high, pale moon. Still, Robin could sense she wasn't alone. The compound occupied a gravel patch the size of a couple of superstore parking lots. Several small tin-walled huts were scattered around. Large tanks of fuel for the garbage trucks filled one section of the compound. There was a recycling station where trucks deposited cans and bottles all throughout the day, and an industrial trash compactor which pressed mounds of refuse into neat, tight bales. Piles of junk and scrap metal towered over the sloped tin roofs. Mounds of boxes and cases and crates overflowing with a mix of trash and trinkets. Ropes and gears and batteries and old electronics, broken things, forgotten things, useful things sometimes. You never knew what you might find. In a clearing at the far side of the lot, dozens of garbage trucks and box trucks, forklifts and backhoes stood parked in rows ready for duty. Robin couldn't see them from here, but she knew. The pale wash of a flashlight crossed the gravel somewhere in Robin's peripheral vision. She dropped to her stomach, pressing herself down and hopefully out of sight. Through her thin black t-shirt, the top of the trailer felt cool against her stomach. She could smell the cigarettes the guards were smoking in the yard, pungent and close. She suppressed the need to cough as the wind brought another cloud of smoke her way. From her flat position, she strained for a glimpse of the guards or to hear the faint crunch of footsteps on gravel. Nothing. She hoped the men weren't as close as they smelled. Robin scooted to the edge of the trailer top and peered down. She could see no movement in the lot, just the cold, hunched shapes of the junk piles. A light had come on in one tin hut, so she hoped that meant some of the guards were taking a break from patrolling the fence. Robin slid off the roof and landed silently on the gravel. Well, almost silently. As she dropped into her ready crouch, she heard a rush of fleet footsteps and suddenly found herself staring into the business end of a bulldog. It might have occurred to her that both ends of a bulldog are capable of some pretty serious business, but right then she had other things to worry about, namely teeth. 42 of them, all sharp and drooly. Chapter 2, Junkyard Jumble. Whoa, Robin whispered. The dog curled back its lips even further. A low growl started at the back of its throat, and Robin could tell the dog was working itself up to bark, loud and hard. But she was a low, dark shape, unmoving, not tall and long-limbed, flailing and running in fear like a normal human. For a long second, the dog growled and grunted in confusion. Its hesitation bought Robin just enough time. "Good doggy," she whispered, in her most patient voice. She patted the air, then jacked back her elbow, reached into the side pouch of her jacket, and came up with a plastic bag. The dog barked, loudly. Robin cringed. "I've got something for you, boy." She unzipped the bag and extracted a fat strip of bacon. The dog sniffed and growled. She laid the bacon on the ground between them, a peace offering. She tossed a second strip a few yards to her left, into the pile of gravel casually mounted against the side of a trailer. The dog froze, turning his nose between the near bacon, the far bacon, and the intruder. Robin held her breath, though she needn't have. It worked. The dog slobbered up the near slice of bacon and trotted toward the far one, with part of the fur still hanging from his teeth. Robin sighed, satisfied. It worked because Robin was the sort of girl who knew not only how many teeth a bulldog had, but also exactly what to do to get a bulldog on her good side. She folded the remaining bacon into the bag, which she kept clutched in her hand just in case. The dog had already barked, and that meant trouble. Keeping low, she crept away from the trailer, away from the pools of light cast by the bulbs at the fence, and toward the deeper dark surrounding the junk piles. Robin heard the faint scrabbling of boots on gravel, not her own. She took off running. Her boots crunched on the gravel. It sounded extra loud, but she hoped the guards might mistake her sounds for theirs. Staying quiet would have been too slow. Sooner or later, probably sooner, someone would come to check on the dog to see why he had started barking. So she ran the width of the lot and pressed her back up against the side of the hut with the lights on, where the people were. She waited. Sure enough, a few moments later, the door around the corner lurched open. "Waldo?" a deep voice. "Where are you, boy?" Across the lot, Waldo barked. Footsteps. From the sound of them, it was one man, large. The pale wash of a flashlight swept the gravel. Robin sucked herself skinny and pressed deeper into the shadows. The footsteps receded away from her toward the dog. Robin glanced up at the night sky, at the faint ambient light from the city, hoping that Waldo was the sort of bulldog who ate fast. She listened to the pace of the large man's footsteps for a few beats, then took up a pace that matched it. He stepped, she stepped. When his foot crunched the stones, hers crunched the same time. She moved along the tin walls, ducking past the door where the man had come out. She darted across the open lot. Behind her, the staff house door clattered open again. "He don't bark for no reason," a second deep voice was saying. "Something's up." Robin slipped behind the high piles of rubble as two additional men moved out of the building, silhouetted by the light from inside. Fortunately, they moved away from her. Robin wove between the tall junk mountains. She knew her way around this maze, and the height of the piles alone offered some protection from the searchers. She felt safe enough for now. Adapters and circuits. Her thoughts drifted back to the reason why she was here. They dumped the most metal and electronics in this section of the compound. She headed toward her favorite pile, to the now distant soundtrack of the men calling after the dog. Waldo, apparently, had other plans. Robin recognized the rhythm of his paws on the gravel. He bounded around a corner and butted his head against her knee. Robin laughed, nearly out loud, at the hopeful, flop-tongued expression on his face. He growled low. "Shh!" Robin dangled the bacon bag from her hand. "I know what you want." Waldo nosed the bag, then turned soft puppy eyes on her. "All right, Bacon Breath." She leaned over to scratch his stubby ears. "Just don't give me away, okay?" Waldo whimpered in apparent agreement as he scarfed 2 fresh slices of bacon. "I hope you got some more where that came from." The words drifted out of the gray air, seemingly from within the nearest mound of sheet metal. Chapter 3, Trouble. Robin spun toward the voice, propping her hands on her hips. "Sneaking up on a girl in the dark? That's not very gentlemanly." A ratchety, rattling laugh filled the darkness. "Got no choice but to sneak," he said, "with all what's going on here tonight." Robin peered at the cluster of sheet metal, trying to spot the craggy old face amid the rubble. Even with the near full moon overhead, she couldn't see him. "Where are you?" "Hiding," he said, "like you better do, 'fore they come round again." Robin crept closer and knelt on the gravel. A small sheet of metal shifted, and a man's thin, wrinkled face poked through the gap. He still had a bruised-looking gash on his cheek. It had been there for weeks, with no sign of healing, but Robin made no comment. "You give that mutt my supper?" he said. "Only part of it," Robin said. "Sorry, Barclay." She handed him the bacon bag, empty but for a few crumbs, then unzipped her backpack and took out a foil-wrapped parcel. Barclay parted the silver wings and sniffed the contents. 2 thick biscuits, a pile of carrot rounds, and a few strips of cold chicken. The bacon had been an afterthought. A lucky one, Robin thought now. "I hoped not to see you tonight," Barclay said, around a mouthful. "Yeah?" Robin thought about the way he was chowing into the biscuits told a different story. "Why?" "Shadows on the moon." Barclay tipped back his head and stared up at the high white oval, looming large in the sky. Wisps of darkness drifted over and around it, filtering its light. "It's not normal." "What do you have for me?" Robin asked. "Did more of my circuits turn up? Any sign of a voltage adapter yet?" Barclay pushed a small pouch through the gap. The grubby folded canvas fit in her cupped hands. It unfolded to reveal a small black box with wires sticking out of it and several squarish ports along one edge. One thick gray cord wrapped around it. "What is it?" Robin asked. It looked like a whole bunch of nothing, but she knew sometimes those were the best finds of all. "You don't see modems like these so much anymore," Barclay said. "You asked your father, eh?" "Right. Why don't you tell me?" Barclay grunted. "Get on home now. Stop coming around here like this." "You always say that." "I mean it this time." Robin rolled her eyes. "You always mean it. But you don't stop collecting cool things for me." She rewrapped the odd, wiry object and stuffed it into her backpack. "Got nothing better to do," he answered. "You with all this rummaging and tinkering. It ain't healthy. Ain't you got some friends to play with?" The comment stung. Robin spent most of her days alone. "You're my friend." "Pfft, friends your own age." "Everyone my age is asleep right now." Wonder why that is. No idea, Robin said. Everything interesting happens after dark. As if on cue, dogs started barking. Multiple dogs. Waldo pricked his ears and joined them. He jumped up and dashed away through the junkyard. Look what you done, Barclay grumbled. They'll come a-searching for you and find me. I'll go now, Robin said. You get down, Barclay said. Under that there cardboard, the big sheet. Ew, Robin groaned. It smelled like very dead fish under there. Barclay chuckled. Welcome to my world. That'll keep the dogs from scenting you. Robin pinched her nose and rolled under the cardboard. Then she let go of her nose immediately. Breathing that stench through her mouth was almost worse, like tasting it. They waited in silence. But the men did not come. The dog's barking died down, and in the wake of it rose the sounds of engines idling, then many tires crunching on gravel. Robin rolled out from under cover. She was too curious not to. Girl, Barclay protested, but Robin was already climbing. She scaled the precarious pile of rubble and poked her head over the lip. Across the lot, the vehicle gate churned open. A row of large trucks drove out through the gate. Not normal trucks, or even garbage trucks. These vehicles were dark, canvas-covered things. A whole stream of them, more than a dozen perhaps, each with a driver, a passenger, and 4 dark-dressed men standing on the runners and clinging to the handrails along each side. Robin climbed down from her perch and stared through the path in the rubble as they rumbled past the outer fence. Chills coursed over her. In the distance, the high tower clock struck midnight, its deep brass tones echoing out over the city. Black clouds bunched in the sky, obscuring the moon. You best get on home, girl, Barclay said. That's big trouble right there.